It's early 1940 in Finland. Soviet troops are sitting around a fire, desperately fighting against the Finnish frost. They're trying to stay positive by talking about home, wondering when they'll head back to see their loved ones again when they hear a crack in the distance, followed by a thud. One of their comrades has just been shot. The men crouch down, their eyes darting across the horizon looking for the shooter, but all they can see is snowy fields. Another crack ripples through the air, another soldier down. They start to panic. One soldier screams out loud, Eto Biela Smert. It's the White Death. Another crack, and that soldier falls. He was right. The White Death is here. But who or what is it? So, with this episode, it's a little different. Instead of focusing on just one person, we're looking at two people. Now, I'd heard the stories of both these people, and for the longest time was wondering how I might sort of package this up into a nice little episode. But then it hit me. Context corner. I'm always, and I use this term loosely, summarizing events leading up to our episodes. So the politics, the wars, the culture. But in this episode, the context is the story. So let's not dive into Context Corner. Let's just get straight into it.
I see what you've done here. You've just written a whole episode of context.
Yes.
We don't actually, yeah. You love your context. You should write a book that doesn't actually like. There's no point to the book. It's just fucking context, just for something.
Yes. The entire book is just the lead up to something, but we never get there.
It never happens.
Yeah, it ends or like it'll be like I don't know, the Napoleonic Wars, and it'll be everything up to like Waterloo, and it'll be like, well, we're not going to find out what happens at Waterloo. No. The book was about everything up to Waterloo.
Yeah, that would really piss people off. You sound like a Game of Thrones writer.
Well, funny enough, Game of Thrones will be mentioned a few times in this episode.
Oh, wow.
Oh, weird. Now, it's December 1905 in a place called Rautjärvi on the Karelian Isthmus in southern Finland. Katrina Haihar and her husband Juho have recently welcomed their seventh child into the world, a guy called Simo Haihar. Now, he's a quiet lad. He's the seventh of eight children, which is a lot. And from not my personal experience, from what I've heard anecdotally from people, is that if you are like the runt of the litter, you tend to get less attention and you have to fight for things, especially like in those sort of days where like food may have been a bit more scarce, so the older ones tended to get more food. You know what I mean? Have you heard
I
this
thought
in
that
like
was true for dogs, not for people. You'd assume people would have the forethought to like look after all their children.
You would, but like I'm aware that like in Victorian Britain, where like the poorest of the poor couldn't necessarily afford to like they could afford to put food on the table, but there's only so much there, and like oftentimes the oldest would get preferential treatment because they'd have to go out and do work or whatever. And
Oh, yeah, sometimes like younger kids would just get given away, wouldn't they?
yeah. So I'm assuming that because he's the seventh of eight children, he keeps to himself. He's very quiet. He tries not to gain too much attention and whatnot. And what he ends up doing is he gains attention through work. So the family have a farm, and he works on the farm, and he's a very good worker as well. In fact, he enjoys working on the farm so much he does the bare minimum when it comes to getting an education. He drops out, like does like 4 years, drops out, ends up wanting to work back on the farm. Like that is going to be his life. That's all he really is interested in doing. Now, one thing he is serious on is hunting. Not necessarily from a sporting angle, because I know that can upset a lot of people, but uh, whilst I'm sure there is an element of sport to it, for him, it very much is sort of a lifeline for the family. You go out and hunt animals, you would then skin them, sell the fur, eat the meat, all that kind of stuff. Like they're actually using it right.
I say this as a vegetarian who likes to piss people off by because when people say they're animal lovers, I'm like, but do you eat meat? You're not really. Then I like to annoy people. I was watching videos of like Alaskan communities recently, and like I was like, I can't argue with it. I like if you don't do this, you will cease to exist. So in those situations, crack on.
Yeah, and that's exactly what's happening here is that, they're not just, I don't know, shooting the deer and then bringing it back, cutting the head off, and it just being a trophy and everything else kind of gets thrown away. Like, it's all been used. It's been, bones are being whittled, furs being sold, meat's being saved and eaten. It's
It's the circle of
actually
life.
circle of life, yes. Now, Simo's very good at hunting. To put it another way, his family would never go hungry. He's that good. Like the boy does not miss a shot. And by the time he turned 17, his country had a massive shake-up. Finland had recently declared themselves an independent nation, splitting from the Russian Empire after the Soviets decided to gun down their head of state. What followed was a very brief civil war in Finland between the Finnish whites, which was pretty much the government and sort of higher ups wanting to maintain what order they had before they left, because they were an autonomous nation, but technically a duchy of Soviet, the Empire of Russia. And they were fighting against the Finnish Reds, which was mostly made up of the working class, the poor. They were backed by the Soviets, that what you would expect from the Russians back then. Now, going back to Simo, who's age 17, okay, he's joining the Finnish Civil Guard. Now, this was created after the Finnish whites won that civil war, and they recognised that their military was just too small and needed more men. But that would cost a lot of money, which they didn't have. So instead, they made sure to have a volunteer civil guard that they could call on in a pinch. Now, we know that I have of late been having sort of this like discovery about myself, having realizations, the fact that I observe the world in a very weird, biased perspective. And I caught myself doing it here, right? I was wondering, why is Simo, a 17-year-old, wanting to join some volunteer service for the country and like joins basically what is the TA in the Territorial Army in the UK, sort of, part-time soldiering kind of thing? Why would he want to do that as a 17-year-old? And the answer made me realize something, which I will get to. So when I was thinking it, I was like, my initial thought was like, what does Simo get out of this? Because I forgot that it was volunteer. I was like, oh, maybe it pays well, and that's why I wanted to do it. And then I was like, wait, no, it's volunteer. Like, why do you want to do this? But really, that part was easy. So, as mentioned, Finland did not have much of a budget when it came to their defence. They couldn't afford to arm a large army. So, instead, they gave their civil guard an older Russian-made Mosin Nagant rifle, which they could take home with them to look after if they bought it. So, in this sense, the nation is not necessarily giving weapons to their civil guard. The civil guard is buying their own weapons. What the state will do is help you maintain that weapon. So they'll, over time, give you the ability to put newer and better sights on them to make them more accurate, give you a heavier barrel to do the same thing as well. And the idea is that you would look after the rifle. You would also train and practice with it while doing your hunting. And then effectively, what the state would get is a complete citizenry that is completely armed and skilled with a rifle who could be called on at a moment's notice.
Isn't that very similar to what the English did with the longbowmen? Like every Sunday, you have to go and practice with your longbow, and then when they needed them, suddenly we've got the best archers in the world.
Yeah, I think it's really clever, and I think it's something that a lot of Scandinavian countries still do, where like a lot of their people are trained to a certain level, and they never get called up, but one day they may, and there you go. You already know your basic training. You're done.
It would speed up the process, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would, because like I think if you look at Ukraine today, like they call up lots of young people to go and fight, but obviously lots of people who have never or not even considered ever joining the military now maybe feel the need to or get called up to do so, and you've got to go through some sort of training when they've never done it. Whereas in this instance, they all know how to use a rifle already. Just give one, off you go.
Makes sense.
So that's one reason. Another was the social aspect to it. So Finland is a large and sparsely populated country. Being involved in the civil guard gave men a good opportunity to meet up and train. So they'd shoot together, they'd go camping, do all the sort of usual exercises, sports activities. It's a real bonding experience, so it's worth going. And the other reasons were things like getting given military grade kit, given free ammunition for your rifle, so then you could continue to practice with it. But the answer that gave me a realization was just this one word: patriotism. Hundreds of thousands of Finnish men joined the civil guard because they had a love of their country and they felt a need to do it. Remember, Finland had only been a truly independent country for about 5 years at this point when Simo goes to join the civil guard. These guys are independent, they don't bow to no one, and they have no intention of ever bowing again. And it's something I wonder whether, like today, in the UK at least, we take this for granted. So I looked it up. In a recent poll of 2,000 people aged 16 to 29 years old, 38% said that they would take up arms or join the military in certain circumstances, while exactly 50% said they would never fight for Britain.
Would you?
I would, but again, I'm in the 38% where I would do it in certain circumstances.
I agree. My circumstances are you have to physically come here into my home and say I'm taking your home, and at that point I'll be like, well, no, that's not happening. I will never go to a foreign land. I don't see any value in it.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming with that. This is where, like, it's certain circumstances, and this is my point, right? I'm not calling out those that wouldn't do it. The 50% that said absolutely no, and nor am I going to call out those that say they'll do it for only certain circumstances, because I think I would fit in that bracket. And as someone who once had aspirations of joining the military as a young person, I, yeah, I would in a certain circumstance. But I wonder what the reason for the 50% of saying I wouldn't do this on absolutely no circumstances at all are. And I wonder, because there are many sort of right wing thinkers who just hate young people. They'll say that these young people are selfish, they hate their country, blah, 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 they're ungrateful. And I wonder if it's not that they hate their country, and rather that their country has failed them. So to have someone put their life on the line for something, they need to be able to define what it is that they're fighting for. It is evident that many young people today don't feel as though the country they live in is worth fighting for. But for Simo and his fellow countrymen, they're serving to protect their newly established independence, right? They are literally training to fight for their future. The phrase "every man's home is his castle," which is attributed to Sir Edward Coke, which originally meant that a person had a right to protect their own home using violence if necessary. But to the point is, you have to have a castle in the first place to defend. Do you know what I mean?
That rings true for me. That's why I say, like, you have to come and invade my home for me to do something. I think the only other time, World War One, I think, was a fucking waste of time. If you really look into what World War One was, how it started, who it was between, waste of time. World War Two, I think, has a lot more stock in it, because at that point you are fighting against fascism that is trying to invade your country. I can understand that one. But as an English person, the last time we were successfully invaded was 1066. Like, we've never known sort of being under the thumb of anyone else. You know what I mean? So that's why we don't really have a sense of. Some people have too much of a sense of sort of nationalism, but like, I love this country. I'm proud of this country. There are parts of this country I don't like. Obviously, we've discussed it at length in terms of our history, blah, 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 education, whatever. But I wouldn't die for it. I wouldn't go to someone else's land to kill them. Do you know what I mean? Like, what would that make me if I go to someone else's country to kill them? They become the person that I've just said I would fight against if they invaded my home.
Mm,
So I guess
yeah.
in my utopia worldview, no one fucking go to anyone else's home and try and kill them.
Yes.
Which
Yes.
sounds easy on paper.
Yes, it does. It does sound a little bit like, why don't we just not do war?
Just don't. But this is what. Have you seen the World Cup videos recently of everyone getting along?
Yeah.
I think 95% of this world could live completely fine with each other. It would be peaceful. Unfortunately, the bastards that are in that 5% are very powerful, and they have reasons for us wanting to hate each other. I think it's nonsense. I think it's absolute nonsense.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, yeah, it's let's say with Simo and his crew, the reason why he wants to do it is because this is a new nation. They're establishing their independence. They're establishing their identity on the world stage, and they want to defend that. They want to protect that. We, as we've mentioned on the pod before, I think with Jake we spoke about it. We are in the cycle of that. Hard men create good times create weak people create bad times. We are in the creating bad times section, where we've never necessarily had to deal with much. We've been quite blessed and fortunate, but it has meant that we don't really know what certain hardships there are out there. That's
But then
my
you
take on
create the
it.
hardships yourself, which is weird. Just stop it. I know I sound so uneducated and so fucking sort of like hippie, but I think there is some stock in just fucking pack it in. It winds me up. Just pack it in.
Well, listen, I would love to be able to put the world to rights with you on this one, but we don't have time. We must carry on, because the temperature is going to get hotter. Simo's time in the Civil Guard was a positive one. Despite being a quiet lad and preferring to stand at the back of group photos, he really did shine on the ranges here. Even at the age of 17, he was an expert marksman. The Guard would host regular shooting competitions for the men, which come with pretty pants rewards. At one point, he won a competition and got a set of teaspoons. But back then,
Were they nice teaspoons?
I would assume they were decent teaspoons. Yeah.
I like nice cutlery. I get it.
Yeah, I have certain spoons I prefer. And trust me, right? You do not want to be stood on the range, look to your left, and see Simo stood there waving with his rifle, because you just might as well go home with your rifle. It's honestly not worth it, because you're not going to win. You're not. He's just too good. Like, the guy is insanely accurate, but he's quick as well. I think at one point, some of his like fellow guardsmen were like, let's just see how fast you can shoot. And he'd just be standing there and he'd like pop off like so many rounds in a minute, and he'd have to like reload and everything. And he was still able to like get so many rounds off, and quite accurately as well. The guy is just a menace with a gun. Now, by the time he turns 19, it was time for him to serve his compulsory military service with the Finnish army. Naturally, having served in the civil guard, Simo was relatively comfortable in the military. His hard graft was recognised by his superiors, who had him sent off for NCO training, where he was made a corporal. You got a little picture on for you there, James, so you can see what we're talking about as we go in. Look at Simo with his smile. How happy this guy is to just be here. Now, in the military, Simo got an upgrade on his weapon. He was now using a bolt-action Mosin M2830 rifle, which was nicknamed the Pistikorva. Pistikorva? Yes, I'm going to go Pistikorva, which was nicknamed after the Finnish Spitz dog breed. And the reason for this was because with the M2830 rifle, the rear sights sort of like poked out a little bit, and they reminded them of the dog's ears because they stick up.
Oh, okay.
Now, Simo's superiors recognised his marksmanship. They were stunned to see how easy it was for Simo to judge distances with his rifle using just iron sights. The guy could you point out, how far away is that, Simo? And he's like, maybe 200 metres. And they're like, let's go check it. And he's really close. Like, he's good. He's really good at this. Now, this boy had a good career here if he wanted it, but he didn't. After his mandatory service, Simo went back to his farm. He'd done his patriotic duty. He had earned his right to go back to his farm to do what he basically wanted to do all along. He, of course, would continue practicing with his new rifle that he'd purchased, honing his skills. Everybody needed to keep on top of their game and be prepared for any threat, because that threat would come just over a decade later. Now, in 1939, those pesky Nazis signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with the USSR, promising not to attack each other, and in return they would carve up Eastern Europe between them, starting with Poland. Now, this was signed on the 23rd of August, with the Nazis invading Poland just a week later. Now, this little timeline is actually fascinating, and to me plays out like Game of Thrones. So, we know that Nazi Germany is making moves. We, the UK, tried to appease them with Chamberlain, the whole peace in our time, I've got a piece of paper signed by Hitler that's not worth the paper it's fucking written on, etc., etc. All the while, the UK, along with France, is making plans on what to do if Hitler does decide that the Sudetenland and Austria is not enough. Now, we know that Hitler wants to take Poland, right? So both the UK and France agree that should Nazi Germany ever invade Poland, they would both come to the defense of Poland immediately. How that would play out, they had no idea, but they meant well. They were going to do something. They didn't know what, but we will. All the while, Chamberlain and his team are talking with Stalin. Now remember, nobody likes Stalin because he's a communist. No one likes those damn commies. They're desperate to get the Soviets on side against Hitler should he go after Poland. And the chat is not going well. Stalin's main demands are a huge land grab. He basically wants free rein to walk into Poland and the Baltic states to basically create a buffer zone between themselves and Nazi Germany. But Chamberlain, he's dead against it, and he's trying to find a workaround. The UK was pissed. They knew that Hitler must have given Stalin a green light. Then Germany invades Poland. The UK and France demand that Germany immediately retreat from Poland, or else they'll do something. Again, haven't figured out what they want to do just yet. Germany obviously tells them to do one, and France decides, I'm going to invade Germany. And the Saar offensive begins, where they make a couple of kilometres into Germany before they get to the Siegfried Line and then sort of go, I don't know if I really want to do this anymore.
Yeah, the French. I was about to say had a good go. They didn't.
They
Um,
had a go.
yeah, but so did Belgium and the Netherlands. I guess they had a go to a certain extent, but
The irony is that France, I think at this point, actually had one of the biggest militaries to hand. After the First World War, they were like, right, guys, we are never letting this happen again. So then they created a massive, like, border, like,
the Maginot Line.
the Maginot Line, and then had one of the biggest militaries, standing armies going, and still didn't really know what to do with it.
Obviously, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but they didn't really realize that Germany could just go into Belgium and down. Like that didn't enter their thought, and that's exactly what the Germans ended up doing.
Yeah, exactly what they ended up doing. So by the 12th, the UK and France meet in secret where they both agree that Poland is fucked. Nothing they can do. And they start looking at the small print in their agreement to come to the defense of the country, being like, yeah, we said we'd do it if Germany did it, but we didn't say that we'd do it if they invaded like after 12. Do you know what I mean? Like really trying to pinpoint, like, oh, do we really have to do it? And then 5 days later, the USSR invades Poland from the east, absolutely wiping the floor with Britain and France. They're like, we was not, no, we kind of knew something was happening, but we didn't think they'd do it or do it this quickly. Like, this is not good. Now, the question becomes this: why didn't Britain and France declare war on the USSR if they were to come to the defense of Poland? Well, a couple reasons. They knew that Hitler and Stalin absolutely hated each other's guts. This agreement, whatever it involved, was simply an agreement of convenience, and they believed it was only a matter of time before they were at each other's throats again. By declaring war on the USSR, they were more likely to push them into an official alliance with Hitler, and then they'd be truly fucked. They did not want to do that. So, for the meantime, they sat back and they let Stalin do as he pleased with Poland, deciding to play a longer game.
It's clever.
It's quite clever because we now know as well that obviously lots of Polish soldiers, the air forces, and I think their government was also brought over to the UK where they could do their thing from here in London. So we know that happened, and obviously had quite a good relationship with Poland throughout and after until the 2000s. Now, over in Finland, they were sweating. Finland knew that Russia wanted it back in the fold. They'd made that very clear on several occasions. It was one of those, they were afraid that Russia might invade, but they realized that Russia was only really going to make a move if they were given a reason to, right? And with the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, they knew that it was only really a matter of time. If the USSR is no longer worried about Germany coming too close to them, they can now afford to go into Finland. So once the USSR invades Poland, Finland knew that they were next on the list, so they quietly mobilized their entire army and its reserves. And they were right to do so, because on the 30th of November 1939, the USSR invaded Finland via the Karelian Isthmus and the long border between the two. Now, Simo, who had been called up to the army, was with the 6th Company of Infantry Regiment 34. I've been just curious about a bit of Finnish. I realise it looks crazy and very hard to say things. Do you want to try and give that word it highlighted a go?
For fuck's sakes.
And this is broken down into phonetic.
Jalkaveik I Ruokmenti. Jalkaveik I Ruokmenti.
Yeah, and I think if I'm right, it just means regiment. Regiment 34 was his regiment, so that's just the way to say it in Finnish, apparently. Jalkaväki Ruokmenti.
It's a crazy language. I remember when I was in Sweden just listening to people talk, and their language is very similar. I was like, this is mental. There's nothing like it on the planet.
No, and like some things, you're like, why does that word need to be that long?
Exactly, because when I'm in like Spain or Italy or Germany or wherever, like I can't speak it, but like there's words in a sentence where I'm like, I know that one. I can make sense kind of what you're saying. Like the Scandinavian countries don't have I don't stand a chance.
It's to do with syllables, but they have more syllables than is necessarily needed. It's like Japanese. Like I'm nearly 600 days into my Japanese at the moment, right? And the amount of syllables in sentences, and you're like, there's no need for this. Now, they were based, Simo and his company, they were based on the west side of the Kola River near the border with Russia. Now, if you look at the southern border between Finland and Russia, you'll see Lake Ladoga. The old border of Finland covered both sides of the lake, sharing it with Russia. Now, the west side of the lake was the more appropriate route. It was well travelled with roads and towns and was the most likely route for the Soviets to use to invade. Now, to stop this, Finland had been trying to create its own defensive wall called the Mannerheim Line, which is the same as the Maginot Line and the Siegfried Line, basically just fortified border. This was named after their famed military leader. Now, on the eastern side of the Kolar, where Simo and his regiment are, this was a thick forested area with very few roads. It was to be a nightmare for the Soviet invaders, but a veritable playground for Simo and his boys. Their job was simple: hold the line and do not let the Soviets get through.
Which is easier said than done, because if there's one army that you don't really want to come up against, it's the Soviets.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're not wrong.
Like, people will come at me for saying this. Like, they were, I don't want to use the word heroes. They were like vital to the Allies winning the war. Like, vital. Like, Americans like to say that America saved England, whatever, yada, yada, yada. If the Soviet Union was not doing what they were doing, the Allies were fucked. They would not have won.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very good argument to say that obviously it was Russia that actually won the war. Russia will be the first to tell you that as well themselves. They will be very proud to go, no, without us, you wouldn't have done this. Listen, I think it was possible. We probably could have, but it probably would have taken a 10 times as long. You know what I mean? It would.
But I just think if they weren't putting resources into trying to take Russia and they put those resources going west, like, would we have been able to withstand it?
Yeah, they do say that Germany's mistake was invading Russia. If they hadn't done that,
But then Hitler hated communists, didn't he? So
yes, exactly. He was always going to attack them, so they were going to get involved some way or other. Now, numerically speaking, the Finns are in a very tough spot. They were able to muster a force of 350,000 strong, but the Russians had around 1 million men at their fingertips, which gave them an advantage of about 3-1. But the Finns had an ace up their sleeve. They had Saruman on their side. That's right, Sir Christopher Lee, famous for playing Dracula, Count Dooku, and Saruman, among many others, was 17 years old at this time, and he had volunteered to fight for the Finnish army.
there's got to be a day where we do an episode on him. His life is insane.
Yeah, do you know what I found out as well? Is that a lot of the things he said about his World War II career seems to be disputed, and people don't necessarily believe him.
Oh, really? I know that he was a Nazi hunter after the war as well.
We will do an episode on Christopher Lee. In fact, I write it a little bit later on saying, we should do an episode on Christopher Lee. I really want to do one day. But yeah, so while Lee would go on to have a rather eventful World War II, his visit to Finland was not that eventful. Arriving with a bunch of other British volunteers looking to fight the Soviets, they were instead given a uniform, sent for a couple of weeks of Arctic training before being put on guard duty far away from the front lines. Their biggest flaw? They couldn't ski. Lee once said in an interview, quote, "We went there with a group of friends and said we wanted to help. We could shoot pretty well, but we couldn't ski. We were thanked for our help, but didn't, of course, get anywhere close to the border." No, so Christopher Lee was indeed thanked, and he was sent back home to the UK. They were like, "Yeah, do you know what? I really appreciate you coming over here, but if you can't ski, we've got no real use for you, so fuck off." Lee would go back home to the UK. He would join the Home Guard before enlisting in the RAF, and then he'd have his own adventures. And like I said, we will one day do an episode on Christopher Lee because he is fascinating. So, Finland didn't quite have Saruman on their side, but they had something much worse: winter. Now, we always say how invading Russia during the winter is a fool's errand. General Winter has historically been on the side of the Russians, but on this occasion, he had switched sides and was looking after Finland. Despite Russia having vast experience in cold climates, they were woefully equipped for the Finnish winter, which at its warmest was minus 10 degrees centigrade.
God, I'd love that right now.
Yeah, I would love that right now. And at its coldest, minus 40.
Okay, that's a bit much.
Yeah, it's a bit much. Now, Stalin had also recently purged his military of all the generals and officers who had half an idea of what they were doing, meaning the Soviet army was effectively just throwing men into Finland and hoping for the best.
I feel like that's just the Soviet tactic, like, overall, isn't it? It's just like, if we just pump enough men at this problem, eventually the problem's going to go away. And fair play, it works in the end, but they suffered a lot of casualties.
It's so true. Yeah, they're doing something similar in Ukraine at the moment. It's quite. Ugh.
Yeah, and using North Koreans as well.
Now, they were unable to get around the battlefield efficiently with their vehicles and were just often traipsing through thigh high snow, making a lot of noise and standing out like a sore thumb because they still wore green uniforms. They didn't quite have their Arctic camo at this time. So those overwhelming numbers on the battlefield were basically useless compared to the nimble Finns who were zipping across the battlefield, taking pop shots at the Soviets from all angles on their skis. They were like, "Yeah, pop, 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 off you go." They were skiing, brilliant.
It's rare, isn't it, that like an invading army, I guess, wins. I get the having the knowledge of a climate and a terrain in war is so important. Just look at Vietnam, for fuck's sakes. Like, if their knowledge of their terrain won them that war.
Yeah, yeah, very, very good thing to point out there. And it's the same here, where this is a very cold, wintry climate most of the year anyway, especially during the snow. They know how to get around. They're very good at it. Whereas lots of parts of Russia aren't. Also, remember, I didn't mention it, but it is a fact. Lots of these soldiers that are invading Finland, lots of them are coming from like the southern regions of Russia, so they're like the more warmer climates, so Ukraine, Belarus, and some other areas. So they're not used to snow that much. So Christopher Lee, he really wasn't joking about his lack of skiing being a problem. All Finnish soldiers were expert skiers. They could ski silently and with speed, able to shoot from them skis too. They were so quiet they often slipped through enemy lines for a surprise attack. Coupled with their all white camouflage, they were like ghosts on the battlefield. And to give you a sense of how important the skis were to the Finns, they could easily cover 30 to 40 kilometers a day on their skis, whereas the Soviets could just about cover 5 kilometers. And because they didn't ski, they were sticking to the roads and pathways, which were then easily defended by the Finns. It's that typical, like you say, it's exactly that. They know the terrain so well. They know how to get around it, know where the roads are, and they're really good at it. So what about Simo? How's his war going? Bro, his KD is insane. This guy's got the UAV, the Predator missile, he's got a nuke, all of it's available to him. And to put it in perspective as well, by the end of his war, he would have enough in terms of COD points, right? He would have 16 nukes available to him.
For anyone who doesn't play COD, that's 25 kills for a nuke.
Yeah, between 25 to 30 kills without a death in COD will get you a Moab. Now, along with his squad, they would often head off on their skis to a known Soviet position and surround them before attacking with submachine guns, and in some cases, Molotov cocktails, which were invented by the Finns, named after Vyacheslav Molotov, who signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. They made Molotov cocktails in his name.
That's clever.
Yeah, so they were throwing it back at him. But when Simo was not part of the squad, he was scouting the enemy. He would ski around the battlefield like a ghost, observing the enemy and figuring out the best way to get at them. At 5'3", he was hard enough to spot at the best of times. He would go out at night to begin setting up a sniper's nest. Often choosing to have his nest next to something like a rock or a tree, he would make sure to build up a mound of snow behind him to create an all white backdrop so he made no silhouette. He would then make a mound of snow in front of him and then knock out a small section for his gauze wrapped rifle to sit in. He would then pour water over the snow so that it would freeze, and this prevented the snow from bursting out into the air when he fired.
That's so clever. I wouldn't even think about that, but we're like, it's necessary.
It's so clever. Now that the nest was made, Simo, with these multiple layers of clothing, meant that he was warm enough to just sit down and not move. He would just sit tight. He was an expert at being still in a position, either crouching, laying, he could do it. Only moving when absolutely necessary. He would just keep a couple of sugar cubes and bread in his pocket, which he would only whip it out when his body started to get the little shakes and was telling him he needed something. That's the only time he would move otherwise. And what he would do to further disguise himself, he would regularly put snow in his mouth to cover his hot breath.
This is a man who knows his climate, how to hunt. Like, it's clever.
It's really clever hunting. It's so clever. Now, there's an image here for you, James, to see, right? This guy looks cool. Now, this isn't Simo, but it's as close to sort of what we imagine he could have sort of appeared like. But in this, like you say, he may have had like a balaclava on as well, so he could hide some of his features and whatnot. But it just looks so cool. The level of detail is insane, right? And like, it's so good. No wonder he goes on to be the most prolific sniper in history. Thanks to all his preparation and practice in the past, Simo was able to just pick off Soviet soldiers left, right, and center, regular troops sitting around a fire, officers studying maps and giving orders. Nobody was safe. On average, Simo was getting 5 kills a day, and almost all of his kills were in 100 to 150 meters range. This is also probably a good and appropriate time to mention he's doing this without a scope. He's using iron sights for this.
That makes it even more impressive. And I say that as someone who's played Call of Duty, so I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and then this is the thing. I'm in my 30s now, so when we're playing like COD or something, as soon as I get available, there's a scope going on that gun.
Mate, now I have to sit with my nose to the screen because I can't see what's like going on.
Yeah, so Simo's going full iron sights on his missions. The reason why? He hates the telescopic lens. He sees no real point in it. He argued that having a sight means you have to raise your head a little to just look through it, and that was enough for him to ping someone else. So he was like, I'm not doing
So,
that.
like, you don't want that glint, do you? We know all about that glint.
And that's it, right? The lens is gonna catch the sunlight. It's gonna show a glint. Sniper glint's real. You're gonna get exposed. And also, the lenses had a tendency to fog up in the cold, which he couldn't be asked to deal with. So he would take advantage of snipers with their scopes. He was like, "Yeah, you're amateurs, mate." There was a Soviet sniper who had taken out 4 Finnish soldiers. Simo was on the hunt for this guy for hours, and when he finally saw a glint from a scope, he knew where he was.
And that's why you don't want to use a scope.
Yeah, Simo followed the guy some more and he waited. As day turned into evening with the light going, the Soviet sniper stood up. He'd clocked out for the day. Simo made him clock out of life.
Jesus, he thought his day was done, and then all of a sudden, I bet his head just fucking
Oh,
exploded.
just, I just picture it. You know, it's in a film somewhere where he's like, gets up, bang.
You ever seen the film Enemy at the Gates?
I mention it in a bit. Yeah, it's one of my favorite films. I love that film. It's so good. Now, on his best day, Simo confirmed 25 kills with his rifle in one day.
For a sniper as well.
Yes, I just think this guy's so cool. I've always had a soft spot for snipers. I remember seeing Saving Private Ryan and being in awe of Private Daniel Jackson with his Springfield rifle muttering religious verse before taking his shots. The whole, where it's raining and he shoots the sniper up. Oh, so good. Or watching Enemy at the Gate, which told the story of Russian sniper Vasily Zaitsev during the Battle of Stalingrad.
That's a cool film.
It's so good, isn't it? It's such a good film. I think snipers are so cool, but I tell you who doesn't think they're cool? Everyone else. Soldiers hate snipers. How often we're playing like Hell Let Loose or something, and then you're just walking across a field, and then all you hear is bing, and that's it, black screen.
That's the thing. I guess when it's like normal infantry, I'm like, right, they're there. I can take cover here. I know what's going on. Whereas a sniper, you could just be you could be going for a piss, and that's it. It's the end of your life.
Well, this is exactly it, right? Regular soldiers saw snipers as dishonorable assassins rather than soldiers who looked danger square in the face and went to battle. These guys, as far as they were concerned, sat in a safe spot for hours on end, just picking off easy targets. They saw them basically as cowards. They hated them.
Really annoy people who are listening to this who have either been in the military or something to me to keep talking about video games, but I get it. You know, when you're playing a game and you just keep dying to the snipers. Like on Battlefield, I use the chat and like, someone, I beg, kill this fucking sniper because he's doing my head in. I've been known to get in a jet and just nosedive one guy because he's pissed me off.
Kamikaze. Yeah. But the thing is, your argument, like your whole hatred towards that sniper player, is exactly what soldiers have in the field as well. So they hated snipers so much. Snipers were treated awfully. If they were captured, almost universally they got executed from all sides of battle, right? Russians and Germans, especially, as soon as you saw a sniper, executed, not having that. You're dishonorable, not interested. The British, they were really big on being like, oh, we follow international law, we follow the rules, we do everything properly. Oh, is that a sniper? I'm just going to look over here for a minute while you do whatever you feel you need to do. Right? Now, the US, they hated the Japanese sniper in the Pacific battle. Japanese snipers tended to tie themselves up in trees so they obviously could sleep there, they could spend lots of time in there. And obviously, if they were to sort of, if you thought you were looking for someone in that tree and they missed you, you're not likely to fall out. Do you know what I mean? But the US, which is very typical of what the US, I imagine, would be like. The US, if they found a sniper and they're like, it's definitely that tree, they went, right, more to that tree, and they'd just blow the tree up.
I get it. I get the annoyance, but I bet that all the people love the snipers that are on their side.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 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 yeah. We all love them.
So don't hate the player, hate the game.
I don't have a head game. It just turns out, though, being a sniper really is not the job you want because you don't want to get
Well,
caught.
just be good at it so you don't get captured.
Yeah, be good. Be like Simo. Now, Simo was one of the most hated snipers out there, obviously. He was so prolific. This guy had hundreds of kills, and I mean hundreds of Soviet soldiers dead at his hands. He was a grim reaper. The Finnish army gave him a nickname, the Magic Shooter, which, let's be honest, is really pants. It's a pants name. In Finnish, it's Taika Ampuja, which is a little bit cooler, but that's only because we don't speak Finnish. The Russians had a better nickname, though, the White Death. Although it is generally thought that the nickname might not actually have been the Russians that called him that, it seems more likely that the Finnish gave him that nickname and said that the Russians had coined it, being like, oh, look, they're so scared of our guy, they call him the White Death, which they were always like, I don't think we did, but sure. Now, by the 6th of March, almost 3 months into the Winter War, Simo had accumulated around 500 kills.
That's silly.
It's stupid, isn't it? 500 kills. Now, it is important to note that these numbers might not be 100% accurate. He did indeed get confirmed kills in the hundreds. Many of his superiors do note this. But he did also get kills with a submachine gun, attacking the Soviets with his squad. So some of those numbers tend to get mixed in sometimes at the 500. Regardless, Simo would go down and is still to this day known as the deadliest sniper in history.
Fair play.
In fact, it was on March the 6th, 1940, that Simo's kill streak would end. The Red Army launched a massive attack, and Simo, with his unit, was locked in a fierce battle, desperately trying to hold them back. Simo was armed with his submachine gun, laying down fire when it went black. Just like hell let loose. Ding! Gone. Now, he didn't know he'd been shot. He couldn't even tell you what happened, but I can. Simo seemed to have met his match. The White Death was being watched by a Soviet sniper. The sniper took his shot and it was clean. He hit Simo square in the jaw, which was bad enough, but this guy was using explosive rounds. He didn't just shoot Simo in the jaw, he blew his jaw off. When Simo hit the ground, his jaw was hanging off his face.
In a poetic sort of way, I think him dying at the hands of a sniper is sort of the way he should have gone. It would have been sad if like a random mortar took him out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The Finns would go on to win this battle and successfully push the Red Army back, advancing through the Kola region. But they had lost their talismanic sniper. In the chaos of battles, Simo's squad had moved up to push the enemy back, but when they realised that they'd lost their man, they fought their way back to find him. They found him among the pile of dead from the battle, his jaw hanging off his face. It honestly must have been quite a sombering moment. You know what I mean? Like, he's probably one of your most famous soldiers and he's now laying there effectively dead. As they paid their respects to their hero, they noticed him twitch. He was still alive.
What the? He's got his face blown off.
Yeah. He's alive, but barely, right? Simo, they've pulled him out from the dead. He's literally lying among the dead, like
With no face.
his face is like hanging off. Like if they had not come back for him, he would have died there and then. But they found him and like, hold on a minute, there's something here. They take him to a field hospital. He then lays in a coma for a week. He's out of it. He finally woke up on the 13th of March 1940, which was the day that Finland and the USSR signed a peace deal ending the Winter War. It turns out that like Finland were like, we actually can't keep pushing you back. Like we're really good at it, but we actually don't have enough men to continue the fight. So they were like, can we kind of, do you reckon we could stop? Because listen, we could carry on and you could keep losing so many fucking men. And like the USSR were like, yeah, all right, fine. So they end up ceding like 10% of their land. A fun little fact was that Simo, while reading a newspaper in hospital, saw an article which was declaring him dead.
Jesus.
Yeah, it must have been weird reading his own obituary. But the fun fact is that Simo wrote to the paper with a letter being like, I'm not dead.
You know what's cool though is that Soviet sniper went back and was like, I killed him. I got the White Death. Thought it was a hero, and then like however long down the line, he's reading. Hold on a minute, this guy is alive. That's aura, as the kids would say.
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, aura, massive. Now, it took over a year of back to back reconstructive surgeries. And for what I could find, I think he went through like 25 surgeries to put his face back together. Although he would have a permanent reminder of his injury, as you can see, James, in the photo there, which we'll put up on screen if you're watching on YouTube. The left side of his jaw would forever hang slightly lower than his right side. Like they did their best.
I've seen reconstructive surgeries before that you're like, oh god, but that one looks okay. He looks alright for a man who got his face blown off.
Yeah, I think they've done not a bad job at all. And actually, he does grow into it a little bit better as he sort of ages. It doesn't look too bad. Now, as mentioned, as a condition of the peace deal, Finland would give up 10% of its land to the USSR, which unfortunately included Simo's family farm. So he has no home to go back to now. But for his sterling performance in the war, the Finnish government gifted Simo a new farm, which he would work alone for the rest of his life. Sadly, because of his disfigured face, he tended to avoid large crowds. He was a quiet man by nature anyway, but he massively preferred the company of his hunting dog and the forest where he would often hunt moose. And sadly, he would never marry and he'd never have children. He was a bachelor all of his life. Now, he kept pretty quiet about his military experience, preferring not to talk about it at all, really. He did write a memoir documenting his skills, but he called it his sin list. I don't think he necessarily regretted his actions, but I think he would have preferred not to have used his rifle against another person if there was the option. He was once asked if he had any remorse for having killed hundreds of men, but he replied with, quote, I did what I was told as well as I could. There would be no Finland unless everyone had done the same.
Like I was saying earlier, if you come to my house, when by house I mean country, and you try and take it from me, that's when I will like I'm acting like I'm somebody, like I'll step in, like, you know what I mean. I'll try and help as best I fucking can. Simo's clearly better than I am.
Yeah.
But he doesn't want that. Like, he doesn't want to be taking another man's life. He just has the skills to do so and had to.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Now, Simo's war might be over, but Finland's war is not. This section of history is genuinely fascinating, and this is what I mean, where it kind of reminds me of Game of Thrones. There are ally ships and partnerships and crossing one another and backstabbing. It's all in here. This section's awesome. It's going to give us a really good like sort of vision of the fact that protecting one's nation is not always just a good versus bad kind of thing. You can do bad things to protect your own nation and still be technically on the good side. Now, we know that the USSR is Finland's enemy, okay? Stating that. Now, remember, the UK could not help Finland for a couple of reasons. They didn't want to declare war on the USSR because they were worried that they would then join up with Germany, right? So they were like, no, not interested, not doing that. Another reason was that they were kind of bogged down in France with no real clue what they wanted to do. This is the phony war, right? Where they're hanging out in French fields. France has had its little couple of days out in Germany, got scared when it saw the Siegfried Line, retreated, okay? That, though, was before the Winter War. They observed the Finns and their heroic fight against the Russians, and the British and French went, these Soviets are washed, man. These guys, why were we fucking worried about these guys? They're fucking shit. So their initial fear of starting a war with Stalin had waned a little, and so they were like, what if we just make a plan? Like, what if we just try something out? And I didn't know this existed, right? Sweden. Sweden, despite being a neutral country during the war, was still trading vast amounts of iron ore to Nazi Germany, which was vital to their war effort in making weapons and other things, right? Britain and France knew this and they wanted to stop the supply, choking Nazi Germany of its lifeblood and hoping to shorten the war. But there was one small problem: Sweden is neutral. Finland was not. Now, if you look at the geography of the world, you've got Norway, Sweden, Finland. You have to kind of go over Norway and Sweden to get to Finland. Otherwise, you have to sail past Germany and up through places and close to Russia, and it's not the best way to get there. Under attack from Stalin's Russia, Britain and France would publicly show their support for Finland and would launch a force of 100,000 men to support them. But to get there, they would land in Norway, march through it, get to Sweden, march through Sweden, and then get into Finland, where they actually expected that Stalin would cack his pants and just back away, right? Because he's doing so poorly in Finland, 100,000 British and French, he'd be like, oh no, I can't do this, right? That was the plan publicly, right? Except it's not the real plan. Britain and France secretly planned to cross Norway, make it into neutral Sweden, where they would then occupy the country and force them to stop trading with Nazi Germany.
You've got to do what you got to do, haven't you?
Right? Isn't it weird? Like when we think of World War II, we tend to think, good and bad. And what's like, yeah, umbrella term, yeah, there's good and bad, but like we were willing to do some shit. Like, when we bombed France off
That's
Algeria.
exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, yeah. We couldn't go through a war without bombing France.
Yeah. So, like I say, the plan was to force Sweden to stop supplying Nazi Germany with iron ore, right? And in the hope that that would sort of choke them out of their war effort. They would then go on to send a token force to Finland to save face, because again, their plan is entirely based on the fact that when British and French troops move into Finland, Russia will go, I'm out. So that was the point behind that. All the while, they would sit in Sweden and occupy it. Both Norway and Sweden, though, they saw through this plan and they rejected it at every opportunity when Britain and France were like, oh, guys, look, we just want to come to the aid of Finland. Please, can we come into Norway? And they were like, no, no, we know what you want to do. And they're like, what are you all talking about? They would go on to regret that, though, because Nazi Germany would end up invading Norway. And then Norway would come asking Britain to help them, which we did. We went into Narvik. If you've played some video games, Battlefield, you've definitely been to Narvik. The funny thing is, we were like, yeah, we'll go to Narvik. And they went to Narvik so fucking quickly. Why? Because we already had plans to invade Norway anyway.
Right. So it was just a case of, like, the operation begins now. We know what we need to do.
Yeah. They were like, because the plan was like, if Norway was going to let us in, Britain was just going to tear right through it. Not interested necessarily in Norway. They were interested in Sweden. They would use Norway as their launching off point to get to Sweden, right? But obviously what they needed was for Norway to agree to let them in. Norway wouldn't let them in. So they had these plans to do it and they were considering doing it regardless. And then Nazi Germany invaded Norway, made it incredibly fucking difficult to now just get through a neutral country. Because now they have to fight their way through it. And they basically were going to execute that plan. Right? That was the point. But whilst the Battle of Narvik was won by the British, French, Polish, and Norwegian troops, they couldn't utilize this and move forward because Germany launched its Blitzkrieg offensive against the French, which scared the shit out of everyone.
I mean, Blitzkrieg is one of the best military tactics we've seen. It was devastating.
Yeah. It was super cool.
But then isn't there a funny story? Was it Rommel? I might be getting the wrong one, where they blitzkrieged a little too hard. And then all of a sudden they're asking, like, where are you? Oh, in the middle of France. Like, what the fuck are you doing in the middle of France? Like, you've gone way too quick.
Yeah, they did. They actually moved too fast for a lot of their army. And they had to wait and then try and keep up in certain other areas. It's fascinating. Blitzkrieg is so cool. In a sort of purely, it's cool, not.
Oh, we're two men talking about World War II, aren't we?
Yeah.
Really getting into the stereotype.
Yeah. So, what did this mean for Finland, right? Germany entering France, what did it mean for them? They might have successfully pushed back the Russians and signed a peace deal, but they didn't trust them. They knew it was only a matter of time before they came back for more. They needed allies and desperately wanted Britain and France to be those guys. We had good relations, but as we know, that fell through. Finland was spent after the Winter War. They'd suffered tens of thousands of casualties and used so many resources, they just didn't have enough. They needed a friend. And on the 22nd of June 1941, they found that friend. Hitler did exactly what the British thought he would. He turned on Stalin and launched Operation Barbarossa, invading Russia. He'd been sweet talking Finland by selling them heavy weapons and food in an attempt to win them over and have them join his side. Now, there's a lot more to this, okay? It's not so simple as I'm about to make it. There's a lot more to it. They are not that interested in joining the Nazis. But to be blunt about it and make it really simple, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Mm-hmm.
Finland made the difficult decision to join the Nazis as co belligerents, not allies, co belligerents. They had no obligation to fight alongside or come to the aid of Nazis if they needed it. They just happened to be fighting the same battle.
Yeah.
There is a lot of talk about Finnish soldiers who would go off to be joining parts of the SS and do other things. No one's perfect. Lots of people go off and do their own weird individual things.
We had Nazis in this country. We have an episode on Oswald Mosley.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not gonna have a go at them. Well, I'm gonna have a go at the ones that sort of join the SS if they did it
Yeah, that's bad.
for the wrong
Slap on the wrist for
reasons.
you.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the UK was looking over the water with very sad eyes. They reluctantly declared war on Finland, although they would never meet on the battlefield. This part 2 of the Winter War was called the Continuation War, or the Second Soviet-Finnish War. Finland would act as a partner in Operation Barbarossa. Back on his farm, Simo heard the news that Finland was once again at war with Russia. Rifle in hand, he was ready to get back in the fight. I imagine that's how we would all react if England went to war with France. He requested permission to return to the front lines, but he was rejected due to his severity of his injuries, he was still recovering from these. Like, it's not even been a year. His face is still fucked up. So, Simo would sit this part of the war out. But our next guy, he did not. Meet Aimo Koivunen, born October 17th, 1917. Now, there's a reason why we've focused on Simo first, and that's because, if I'm honest, I've really struggled to find more information about Aimo, but his story is so good that I felt the need to include it. Being 12 years younger than Simo, I can imagine their paths were relatively similar in that they would have to do compulsory military service. But for Aimo, he would likely have done his in the late 1930s, which would have put it very close to the start of the Winter War. Now, not wishing to downplay Aimo's experience during the Winter War, but his time during the Second Soviet-Finnish War is where this story really gets crazy. So let's quickly get to there. Serving as a regular during the Winter War, he was part of a successful defense against the Soviets during many battles, which earned him a promotion thanks to his impressive survival skills. He was also offered a chance to join an elite long-range ski patrol unit who would get in behind the enemy and cause havoc. Like, these guys, their jobs, they would ski for weeks behind enemy lines, just doing survival basics and all this sort of stuff, like very few resources or anything like that, go really far and do reconnaissance. Like, these guys are like, I don't know, the SAS but on skis. As the war kicked off again, now with some equipment and supplies from Nazi Germany, Aimo and his elite squad were off on the hunt. One of those supplies was brand spanking new and was key to the German army swarming Poland and France in record time. Pervitin, also known as Panzerschokolade. Recognize it yet?
Mm.
Today we would call it methamphetamine or crystal meth, ice, glass, speed. You get the gist, right?
Yeah.
Originally synthesized in 1937 by German chemist Fritz Hauschild, Pervitin seemed to completely eliminate a soldier's ability to feel exhaustion. Soldiers just didn't stop. They didn't sleep. They felt no need to slow down or stop their marching into battle, and most advantageously, they seemed to show absolutely no fear at all while they were high. You mentioned, James, about Blitzkrieg, how they just kept going. This is why.
Well, this is like if you've ever been on a night out, you've probably seen people on various narcotics. You may have even dabbled yourself. They're like you can pick them out from a crowd because they have more energy than anyone else. You can see it in their eyes. You wouldn't want to get into a scrap with them because when you get tired, they're going to keep coming. And also, they'll be the ones there at 8 in the morning still dancing while you're tucked up in home like 7 hours ago.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
get the logic, but there is also like I don't think the Nazis really thought through the long-term effects of using hardcore drugs.
Yeah, yeah. Now, does this drug actually turn the average German soldier into Captain America? No, of course not. But the drug does trick the brain into ignoring its physical capabilities. It suppresses a soldier's appetite. It almost completely kills off their pain receptors, making them feel like super soldiers who couldn't be stopped even when shot. So, back to our man Imo. It's March 1944, and he's out with his unit on ski patrol. They're 3 days into their reconnaissance mission behind enemy lines when they decide it's now time to head back. As they were skiing back, they met the enemy who attacked them. Outnumbered, they made a run, or a ski for it. Pushing themselves as fast as they could without stopping, it became too much, and Imo started to fall behind the pack. His comrades encouraged him to reach for the meth, but he was initially hesitant. It seems that he wasn't actually a fan of the drug at all, didn't really like the idea of soldiers taking it, but he knew the situation he was in. He understood, right?
It's like fucking Popeye with his spinach.
Yes, exactly that. It's exactly what's about to happen, right? Now, luckily, he was the man in charge of the unit supply of meth, so he grabbed the bottle which had all the pills in it. Now, we all know how difficult it can be at times to open a damn medicine bottle, right? Now try doing it in sub-zero temperatures with frozen mittens on. Imo couldn't get just one pill out. He ended up chugging the whole bottle to his face and done the entire unit's worth of meth in one.
Surely that's an overdose, and surely that ends his life.
Yeah, as you can imagine, what followed was something magical. Imo was skiing like he'd never skied before. He no longer felt exhausted, he felt fucking amazing. He was skiing so fast and so far that he ended up leaving his unit completely in the dust. And he just kept fucking going. So far, he ended up skiing over 400 kilometers away. That's 250 miles. He just kept
That's
going.
so far.
He's just skiing for his fucking life. It's so funny. He actually ended up skiing through a Russian patrol unit who were very surprised to see a Finn off his tits on meth skiing through their lines. And as he finally came to a stop, he had no idea where he was. In a heightened state, he killed a bird with his ski pole and ate it raw. He went on to find an abandoned hut which he used as shelter. He started a fire to try and keep warm, but didn't really think it through. He started the fire in the middle of the wooden hut, which immediately set it all on fire.
And that's a no-no.
Yeah. Now out in the wilderness again, he believed he was being attacked by a wolverine, and a vicious fight between man and beast occurred entirely in his own head. Imo won that fight, by the way. It turns out he was fighting a tree stump.
Oh. Right.
Now, the only thing that stopped him was when he skied over a landmine which blew his foot off. Imo is said to have laid in the snow for around a week before being found. Now, I'm a bit dubious on the week.
A week's crazy. Blood loss would kill you.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, and he's off his tits. Do you know what I mean? Maybe a day or two, but this guy's on death's door. Do you know what I mean? He was actually found by his comrades and taken immediately to a hospital where it was recorded that his heart rate measured at 200 beats per minute. For reference, for anyone who doesn't know, a normal resting heart rate for a healthy adult human is between 60 to 100.
But the thing is, people can like, when you're doing really intense exercise, you could probably get up to like 150, 180, 200. I'm not a doctor. 200 you probably get yourself looked at. But the thing is, this would have been happening while he was resting. That's a 200 resting heartbeat.
Yeah, yeah, he's been laying there for a day or two with a foot blown off. Like, he's not doing anything.
And his heart is just It's a miracle he didn't have a heart attack.
Oh, 100%. It's a miracle this guy ain't dead. Imo was medically discharged from the army. The war with Russia would end just a couple of months later anyway. The Finns may have been a formidable force, but Russia had the numbers to keep throwing at them. After the war, Imo would go on to marry a woman named Elsa, and they would go on to have 9 children together, which for me means the meth is probably still in his system.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But joking aside, Imo seemed to have had no long term effects from his overdose.
That's mental. That should kill someone.
Hardy people.
It's like Ozzy Osbourne, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, that man should have died a long time before he died.
Now, he would keep a quiet life, pretty much like Simo, only talking about his experience to very close friends. He would actually tell his story in the 1970s to a veterans magazine. I did find a copy of it, only had a few pages. And yeah, the story pretty much come from that magazine. Imo Koivunen would pass away on August the 12th, 1989, aged 71. Good innings.
Good innings for a man that overdosed on meth.
Yes, and our friend Simo Haiha would pass away on April the 1st, 2002, aged 96.
Really good innings for a man who got his face blown off.
Yeah, no kids.
No, that's no stress. He lived a lovely life just on his farm.
Yeah, just him and his dog. Yeah, loved it. Now, in Finnish culture, there's a thing called sisu. There's no direct English translation, but it kind of means an intense determination, sort of grit, bravery, resilience. It's something that happens when you're past the point of desperation, when there's nothing left in the tank but you keep pushing on. That's sisu. You may recognise the word from the 2 movies recently released named Sisu, which tells a fictional story of an older Finnish soldier who, despite the odds, fights off the Nazis. He's like the Finnish John Wick. It's quite a cool film. Now, I think that both Simo and Imo define what it means to be a Sisu warrior. They did incredible things in dire circumstances, things that most humans just couldn't. Granted, Imo was high off his face, but still. Both their stories are incredibly famous. Simo has even gone on to be immortalised in media. There are many a film and TV show that is desperate to tell his story. They did like the best Finn. Like we've got like the best Brit, and Winston Churchill was named the best Brit. Simo was number 74 in best Finns throughout history. So he's up there.
I couldn't even name you 73 more Finns.
No, I could name you 74 Brits I want on the list.
No, true.
Simo has even made it over in Japan, featuring in the manga Record of Ragnarok, where the gods face off against humans for their very existence in a death match. It's currently an anime as well on Netflix, and it's actually quite fun. You've got a picture there, James, from the manga. That's their depiction of Simo.
It was cool.
He looks really cool. They call him the White Death, Simo Haiha. It's really cool. Record of Ragnarok, to give you an example of what's happening, Zeus fights the first man, Adam, which is not a bad fight, and Hercules fights Jack the Ripper in a mock Victorian world.
Right, a Greek god fights man.
Yeah, Jack the Ripper wins. He beats him.
How?
Yeah, because he's super good with a knife.
With a knife.
Yeah, he's super good with a knife. And also, but you've got to think, Jack the Ripper slides into shadows. He can just be anywhere. Like, Jack the Ripper just shows up and gets Hercules. He fights dirty.
Okay, I find that one hard to believe, but okay.
You've got to watch it. It's good. And our man Simo fights the trickster god Loki with his trusty rifle.
It sounds like a good premise.
It's a really fun premise. There's some really good stuff in there. I don't know who wins that fight because I don't want it spoiled for me because I'm currently watching the anime. But that's about it, really. I don't have some wordy ending or anything. It's just an awesome story that I'm really glad I finally got an opportunity to tell. So there you go, Simo Haiha and Imo Koivunen.
It's a fun episode, and one, we got to just be fucking 2 guys talking about World War II, which we all like doing it. We all like talking about battle tactics. We do, but also like shows the resilience of the human spirit, that whenever things are looking bad, just do some meth and everything will be okay.
That's not.
That's what I'm taking away from this story.
Yeah, when all is in doubt.
Just don't even take a little bit of meth. Take a lot of meth.
Do your whole squad's worth of meth.
Too much meth, and just see what happens. For anyone taking that seriously, please do not do meth or any of the hard drugs.
Yeah, I feel like we shouldn't have to tell people that, but maybe we do. Brilliant, man. I love that story. I really enjoyed writing it as well and just looking into it. And I'm a World War II guy. I love the stories, and this has just genuinely been such a fascinating side of the war that I really didn't know much about at all.
Well, this thing we don't learn about in schools, do we? The Winter War and what happened in like Norway, Finland, Sweden. It's really important to the war. But obviously, we are heavily focused on what was happening in France and the Blitz in what happened in Germany. That was sort of our theatre, wasn't it?
Yeah, it very much was. So, thank you so much for watching this one. Listen, we have had quite a lot of people reach out to us on the pod recently, and it's been so fucking cool to be talking to lots of you guys. So please do keep them coming. You've seen all the reels, and James has been chopping up the episodes and putting them out on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and whatnot. So go support that, show it some love, go give them a like. Follow us on YouTube and TikTok and everything there, where you can see our lovely faces as we record these now, which is awesome. If you'd like to, we don't typically mention it very often, but if you would like to, only because we had someone subscribe quite recently, we do have a Patreon. If you would like to support the show monetarily, feel free to. There is a Patreon there. You get episodes with no ads. You get episodes a day before everyone else. And you'll get access to some exclusive video footage that goes out on Patreon. It's not a lot, but there is a few things on there that's quite funny.
And also, every time it happens, either me or Ryan will message each other being like, look what just happened. So if you want us to have that reaction.
Yeah, listen, for the most part, ads do enough for us. We get just about enough to sort of cover some bits through ads. So don't feel like the need to. We did have someone recently reach out and say, like, I'm just a student. Like, I'd love to be able to. Look, we've been students. We get it. We're not asking for your money. If you do want to support us, you can. If not, that's totally fine. But just following us on like YouTube and TikTok, honestly, will do the world of good. Keep doing the 5-star reviews on Spotify. Also comment on the episodes because it helps with the algorithm. And I'm always throwing a poll out there. So you'll find out what the poll is for this episode just if you look below now, if you're listening to the episode. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us on this episode, guys. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you have too. And see you on the next one.
Take it easy.